Does God want a separation of church and state? Should Christians be voting biblical principles? Does it really matter who you vote for? Join Pastor Jerry Cook as he endeavors to answer these and many other questions over the next hour on Politics in the Pulpit. And now, Pastor Jerry Cook.
Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, where we talk about the two things that you're never ever supposed to bring up in public, religion and politics. They actually do mix. I don't care what your pastor says. Let me give you a couple of shameless plugs real quick. If you are looking for something to do this coming Saturday, just to kind of get your patriotic blood boiling a bit, June 29th at 6 p.m. at Freedom's Way Baptist Church, we'll have our Independence Day concert with the Santa Clarita Valley Concert Band. They'll be doing about an hour and 20 minutes worth of patriotic music. And then on June 30th, for those of you who want to meet, Lord willing, our new up-and-coming district attorney for Los Angeles County, once George Gascon has been given the proverbial boot, you'll want to come to Freedom's Way Baptist Church for our worship service this coming Sunday at 10:30 a.m., where we will be introducing and welcoming Nathan Hockman. He will give about a 10 or 15-minute talk, just to kind of talk a little bit about what his ideas are going to be if, in fact, he does get elected. I'd encourage you to get there by no later than 10:30, considering we have a color guard that is going to start right at 10:30 sharp, and they'll have to be at another event very soon thereafter, so I encourage you to get there a little bit early. Obviously, we are only about a week away from July the 4th, and there are a lot of wonderful things happening in our community, and one of the community leaders, if you will, that has been around for quite a few years now, specifically Tim Traurig here, who is to my right. He attends Higher Vision Church over in Kistag, and he represents something called the Guardians. He is no stranger to KHTS. He's no stranger to the Goldmans here, and he's no stranger to our community. So good to have you here today, sir.
Thank you, Pastor. It's good to be here.
Tell me and tell us a little bit about the Guardians.
Well, Guardians is definitely a passion of mine. It is an organization that really started about 8 years ago, and it really came out of, I felt, God's leading in my life to have a group that would specifically support veterans, military, law enforcement, and firefighters. And it's what we do. We have weekly meetings that we do. We have outreaches, service projects. We have large events where we try to connect with our community of people, fire, police, and military, and let them know that there's a place where they can connect, find camaraderie and support and connection, relationships, with a goal of really trying to minimize the statistics of what we've seen out there when it comes to suicides amongst our veterans, the suicides amongst our fire and law enforcement, which are off the charts now too. More police officers and firefighters will die from suicide than in the line of duty. And that just that statistic changed over the last couple of years. And I think when you look at, you talk a little bit about politics and you see what's been going on, and the view towards our law enforcement officers has been a lot of added anxiety and stress, not only on those men and women, but their families. And so to have a place where they can go and just process out some of that stuff and be connected with like-minded individuals with similar backgrounds and experiences can be very healing, supportive, and plus it's kind of what we're all used to. It's like me, I'm a retired fire guy, hanging around the kitchen table or riding around in the squad car together or being deployed together. There's this bond that happens when you're with those men and women that's really hard to explain, and your comfort level around those men and women goes really deep.
Somebody was bringing the Guardians up to me the other day and was asking me about whether or not it was specifically just for those within armed forces, and I said no. You have an expanded ministry or an expanded outlook to include police, firefighters, as well as those who have been deployed across the globe and in the United States of America, because you believe, I'm assuming, that all three of those kind of have the same vision, which is the safety and peace of our nation and our peoples and our cities. And they kind of basically do the same things, though in different theaters.
Yes, that's exactly right. And they all have sworn an oath and be willing to lay their life down for somebody they don't know, for their brother, for their sister. And so they have that in common too. They're really giving people who have really a passion to make a difference either in their country or in their communities. And that's really brings a common goal together for all of us when we are together, to really utilize that passion, not just because a lot of us are retired now,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to end just because you retire.
Yeah.
So we've kind of turned that focus for a lot of for at least for our organization, towards maybe those that have retired but aren't getting the support they need anymore. They're alone, they're divorced, they're depressed, they're trying to find an identity, their new identity. They just came out of the military, and hey, I go from being in the military, now I'm back to civilian life. Who am I?
Yeah.
And that happens with all three of those areas, fire, police, and military. It's transitioning can be really tough.
Perhaps you could speak to this more than the other two branches of either military or police, but as a fireman, we know the statistics when it comes to police officers committing suicide. I'm just wondering what the trend is among those in the firefighting business.
Yep, the stats are really high there too. Like I said, there'll be more firefighters that will die by suicide than in the line of duty. And I think that's kind of what spurred me on, started creating this desire to someday have a safe place for this community to connect. Was I had a good friend on the job. I was only about 3 years on the job back in 1983, 84, somewhere around there. And this individual was a happy-go-lucky guy, had a young son. He was a single dad, was doing a lot of great things, smiling when he comes into work, joke with everybody. And one day he went behind an old fire station, put a coat hanger around his neck, and took his own life.
Wow.
And that really impacted me. It helped me, one, realize, holy smokes, we don't know each other as well as we think we do, even though we're spending a lot of time together. And as a son of a veteran, my dad was a Korean War veteran, was also an LAPD officer, and he was shot about his third year on the job, and his partner was killed. And so I got to, as I look back as an adult today, I can see that my dad struggled with some trauma. He never talked about a lot of that, but I could see the disconnect, some of the disconnect emotionally that my dad was experiencing in his life. He was an awesome dad, but I can look back today and go, there was some of this going on.
What branch was he in, if you don't mind me asking?
He was in the Navy.
He was in the Navy.
Yes.
Did he see action?
He did.
Yeah.
He was on the USS McKenty, was the ship he was on.
Wow. Wonder if he had any kind of contact with General Douglas MacArthur.
I don't know. Like I said, he never talked about it much, and that was one of the things I really regretted. My dad passed away in 2018, that I never got a chance to just sit and talk with him about that. I'd love to know more. He actually died before we actually turned Guardians into a nonprofit, because he would have loved what's going on with Guardians, because he really enjoyed that.
Why do you think, I kind of already know the answer to this, but maybe more for our listening audience, why do you think it's so hard for those in law enforcement, those in the fire department, and specifically those in the armed forces, especially if they've seen action, why do you think that they feel like they need to be introverted about that as opposed to just kind of letting it spill out and talking about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it is, it's survival. I think these men and women, we've developed a really important skill. And it benefits us when we're doing what we do. That's to take normal human emotions and stuff them in a box. If you're going to see trauma and the kind of stuff we're exposed to on a regular basis, whether you're in the military, law enforcement, or fire, no human being was meant to see trauma like that over and over and over again. Somebody experiences a major trauma in their life, it's devastating for the rest of their lives. These are men and women, they're seeing this stuff on an ongoing basis over and over
And
again.
it's real, it's not a movie.
It's not right. It's not a movie. It's the real deal. And so you have the smells and the sights and the noises and the experiences of watching families grieve and seeing the trauma that's happened. So what we do is we develop the skill to put those in a box so that we can be good at what we do. But there's collateral damage to that. And the collateral damage is we become disconnected with our emotions and feelings. When you bring up emotions and feelings in a Guardian group, everybody's like, whoa. And so one of the goals with Guardians is to get these men and women to get comfortable with talking about their feelings. And it's not easy. I knew when I first started it as a small group
Yeah,
with this.
guys have a real tough time with that one, right?
Right, they do. And actually gals are a little better a lot better expressing their feelings, but even the gals that have been have developed the skill of stuffing those emotions.
Yeah.
And they're not going to come out unless they're in a safe place. And what safer place, where would these guys and gals feel the most comfortable than amongst their own peers?
Yeah.
The people they trust the most are their own peers. The people that they were committed the most, spent the most time with, were their peers. So when you bring them all together, there's magic that happens in those rooms. When guys and gals are sharing and talking, it starts to unlock other people that have been locked up when they realize, hey, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to experience a little bit of emotion and start to get in touch with some of those things. The stats amongst our population of people are not good when it comes to divorces, suicides, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse. So when you look at all that, what you're seeing are men and women trying to deal with a box full of emotions that they don't know what to do with. So when you feel emotion come up, you go medicate.
Yeah.
I go drink. I go use drugs, or it comes out in anger, and I become abusive as a husband or as a wife. My anger goes from 0 to 100 real quick. And I saw that in my own self, so I've experienced it. And it's a process of really going through that healing and being willing to be courageous enough to go there. And these are courageous men and women, and I challenge them with that so they can get their lives back.
We're speaking to Tim Traurig with the Guardians here in Santa Clarita. And Tim, let me ask you also, I'm assuming it's not wrong to say that the Guardians is a faith-based.
We don't put ourselves out as a faith-based, and I think...
But it's an opportunity to at least bring it up.
Absolutely. And a majority of our men and women in there have a faith in God, no doubt.
Sure.
But in not putting out as a faith-based organization, we were really trying to prevent there from being any barriers that would keep any person from coming there. Oh my gosh, it's faith-based. I don't want to go there and be preached at, so they don't show up.
Yeah.
We know once we get them in the door and they realize, hey, nobody's here beating you over the head with the Bible, but you're going to hear men and women share their experiences and their healing process where God was a big part of how that happened.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I think it's probably best, now that I look back at it, that it might be the best way to actually promote it. Because, once you tell people we're faith-based, automatically they come into it with assumptions, right?
Yes.
But if you just say, hey, we're here to help, and then somehow, some way, the Bible and the Lord Jesus Christ comes into the equation,
Yes.
they now make that connection.
And that's exactly how it works.
Keep talking, Tim.
It's exactly how it works. And so there was even it was even hard at first because we were running out of Higher Vision Church.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in a church. It must be a church thing.
Sure.
And so we really kind of battled that for a while. And we did start in a church as a small group.
Sure.
And then got to a point where, gosh, we wanted to do so much more, reach so many more people because it was working for us. So we turned it into a nonprofit in 2021. And we quadrupled our attendance in 6 months. And we have over 90 members right now on our roster.
Excellent.
So the need is there. There's no doubt. We just expanded in the San Fernando Valley. We're now running a Guardians out of VFW Post in Granada Hills at VFW Post 2323. And that's another thing that's on our hearts, is to start to expand and have these places where men and women amongst that community can come and find a place to connect and support.
We're just a week away from Independence Day. And what does Guardians have up their sleeve for the 4th or the week of the 4th?
Yes, we're definitely going to be in the 4th of July parade again.
And so will we.
All right. Look forward to seeing you in there. We so enjoyed it last year. And I'd like to tell you how healing that was for some of our members to be in the 4th of July parade. And something we're doing a little different this year is we got them a nice, comfortable couple of carts from SCV Carts to take some of our older veterans,
Great.
Vietnam veterans that really had a horrible homecoming and experience back in those days.
Indeed.
Last year, when I watched one of our veterans who rode with us in the parade get very emotionally and teary-eyed as he was going down the streets and seeing all the patriotic people in our community waving American flags, saluting, saying thank you for your service. It was so healing for him, but it was also very emotional to see that in our community.
And it's too bad that it took 50 plus years
Yes.
for that to be recognized.
You bet, you bet. So we're going to have a whole bunch of vehicles, fire law enforcement vehicles, some weird-looking military vehicles. We've got some classic cars. We've got some old police cars. So you're going to see a little bit of everything this year, and we really enjoy just being out in our community and showing our support.
Tim, tell the folks how they can help support the Gideons, with the Gideons, the Guardians, I'm sorry, and how they can help support you, and maybe some of them want to come on board as a counselor or something like that.
Sure, that'd be awesome. You can go to our website at guardiansscv.org. You can also go to any of our social media at guardiansscv, and you can also call us at 661-347-6307. And we do community projects where we go out and help veterans or go up to our local VFW post 6885 on Sierra Highway. And we do work there and try to bring some life back into some of these posts that have slowly started dying off, because there are a lot of older men and women that go there and they're slowly disappearing, and these posts are slowly going away. And we see an opportunity for Guardians to come into some of those areas and create a place for Guardians to support that population, bring life back into some of these places.
Tim Traurig, thank you so much for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit today, and praying and hoping that the Guardians expands and that the Lord will continue to give you more influence, if you will.
Thank you.
Not only in our community, but across the state of California.
Thank you.
Where we talk about the two things that you're not supposed to talk about ever in public: politics and religion. We just had Tim Traurig with the Guardians on, and I was glad to have him on because we're just a week away from the Independence Day holiday, and they do a lot of good work for not only those within armed forces, but of course for our cops and for our firemen out there. And so we appreciate what the Guardians does and represents. And by the way, they'll be with us this Sunday during our Red, White, and Blue Sunday, where we invite where we have Nathan Hockman as well. On the line is, Lord willing, our next new state assembly woman for our district, all the way from Santa Clarita through Victorville, Adelanto, and great swaths of the AV. Suzette Valladares, how are you?
Hello. Thank you so much, Pastor Cook, for having me. And correction, I am the former Assemblywoman for Santa Clarita, and I'm running for state senate to be your next senator.
You know, I knew I
Thanks
would mess something up right there. Yeah, state senate. My goodness, you're taking over Scott Wilk's seat. Why would I lower him to say state assemblyman?
You know, he was our state assembly member, quite some years ago. And, he actually, Vanessa Wilk, his wife, is the true reason I was recruited to run for his former state assembly seat. So lots of fun connections there, but he did both too.
And by the way, maybe me saying state assembly was just part of the continuation of the roast from last Saturday.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Are you still laughing?
A little bit, yeah. I was embarrassed by some of the comments. Actually, not at all. You know what it reminded me of, and let me just get the listeners in on this. So there was a roast for Scott Wilk, kind of to ring out the old and bring in the new, if you will. And so it was kind of a dual roast, more for Scott, but of course for you as well. But it reminded me of the old Dean Martin celebrity roasts from the 1970s and the old Friars Club, where they used to roast, some of the big movie stars back in the day. And, it's all in good fun, and, we're supposed to insult each other, and then at the end we kiss and make up.
Yeah, you know what? It was a phenomenal event. It was a fundraiser to benefit my Senate race, but so graciously, Senator Wilk agreed that he would be roasted to benefit my Senate race. We have a big fundraising deadline actually coming up on June 30th, so it was in perfect time. And you're absolutely right. It was some of our movers and shakers here in Santa Clarita that have known Scott for decades, and people who have just known him for a few years, like Councilmember Jason Gibbs, who was there on stage roasting Scott. And you're right, it was all in good fun, and lots of political humor there, but all to benefit my state Senate race. I think we raised over $100,000, and I don't know if that was strictly to support me or because people wanted to see Scott get roasted, but I'll take it either way.
Yeah, either way, it all went fine, and it was well attended, and I think the spirit was good. and everybody generally liked each other in there. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was a fun event. I was really blessed.
So tell me about the current state of the race. Where are things between you and Kip? And inform our listeners, Suzette, that Kip is really not one of us, and I don't mean that in the human sense, just not one of us in terms of a Santa Claritan, someone who understands our community, especially here in the Southern California area.
Yeah, so just to kind of back up a little bit for everyone that's listening, the state Senate is one of 40. I'm running for one of 40 seats in the state Senate. The state Senate District 23 includes Santa Clarita, the Antelope Valley, Victor Valley, Adelanto, Hesperia. It's a massive district of roughly about 1 million people. And, you know, if you know anything about me, or if you don't, I'm a local girl. You know, I was born and raised just over the hill in the San Fernando Valley. But I, grew up going to the movie theater on Cinema Drive in Santa Clarita. And for those of you that know, there's no longer a movie theater on Cinema Drive. But I remember that movie theater. You know, my first job was at Maverick Mountain. I went to College of the Canyons, Cal State Northridge. You know, got my first internship working for Congressman McKeon in Santa Clarita. You know, and I have lived, in Palmdale. Now I'm in Acton with my husband and my daughter, but I'm a product of our community. And there is a stark contrast between me and my opponent because he quite literally moved he's from the Sacramento and Bay Area. He moved to LA to run for office. So he has no idea of the history, the uniqueness that makes up our community, why we're so special, yet alone, our values. So quite a huge contrast there. And, also, Pastor Cook, he's also part of, what is the problem in California, right? At every corner, we're facing a crisis, whether it's, homeowners insurance, wildfires, affordability, homelessness, like you name it, we're there. He's a part of what, I'm going to coin this, it's the West Coast progressivism. And there was actually a really good article in just last week. I think it was in the New York Post. It was an op-ed by a man who's a Democrat by the name of Nicholas Kristof. And did you read it?
I got it on my reading list, but yeah, I'm supposed to do it tonight.
It is. I want to highly encourage you to read that. And the title is like, "What Have Liberals Done to the West Coast?" Right? Because, and he talks about the ideology of the far left in places like, Sacramento and California, and how they're so committed to their religious political ideology than they are to actual outcomes. And my opponent is cut of that thread. He wants to defund the police. He's soft on crime. He doesn't truly want to address the issue of homelessness and the root causes of mental health and drug addiction. He's from that, far left cloth that one is ruining the state of California, but unrecognizable to the JFK Democrats that, my family once aligned with. And that's not what we need. We need to put California back on the right direction. And it's a key reason why I decided to run for state Senate.
Well, one of the reasons why California is in the state that she is in is because of our feckless governor that we have right now in Sacramento. And he has not been very faithful about his State of the State address. But just a day ago, he, pre-recorded something and, put it out that way. And I want to just get your reaction to something that Governor Newsom said in his pre-recorded State of the State speech. He said, quote, "Our values and our way of life are the antidote to the poisonous populism of the right and to the fear and anxiety that so many people are feeling today." Essentially, the Democrats have been always trying to say, well, we got to bring people together. But the same people that say we have to bring people together are the very same people who are separating us. And he just said that there's a constituency in this state that are poisonous, and he calls them the right. What say you to that, Suzette Valladares?
Yeah, I read or listened to rather his State of the State, and it was infuriating for a lot of reasons and really sad for even more reasons. It's been very ironic that he can make time to go to the Vatican. He can make time to go to a climate summit. He can make time to debate Ron DeSantis, but he can't make time for an in-person State of the State, which, mind you, I think was over like 75 days late.
Yes.
To do that in person in front of the legislature, his equal branch of government in Sacramento. And, that was a little ironic, but not surprising. But it also just, similar to his counterpart in the presidency right now, it just made me think that he's delusional or he's, moved to the state of denial. And because he clearly doesn't live in the state of California. If the antidote to his antidotes and his solutions are a higher cost of living, are more criminals on the streets, of a lack of accountability, or defunding the police, or letting people live and die in filth and mental health and drug addiction on our streets, right? That's what he's essentially touting by failing to address these very critical issues that we have on the state, yet alone the $70 billion deficit that came from a legislature and the governor squandering taxpayer dollars. It is so incredibly infuriating on how during his tenure in the governor's office, he has destroyed our state. And who would have thought that I would be saying, anybody, of us on the right in the Republican Party would be saying, man, we miss Jerry Brown. Like, it is so bad that we miss Jerry Brown.
Yeah, that's old school liberalism as represented by Jerry Brown. And at least he didn't react the way that Newsom does and actually did listen to some of our ideas, and so we appreciate that about Jerry Brown. But I want to ask you, Suzette, as you're running for state senate, how is your finger on the pulse when it comes to the state trending a little more right, or if you will, a little more conservative, or a little more common sense conservatism? I was just talking to Carl DeMille the other day, and he was telling me about some polls from Public Policy saying that even in California, there seems to be an awakening, if you will, for lack of a better term, of folks in our state. Do you think that will translate to a success for Suzette Valladares in November, for Steve Garvey, for Patrick Lee Gibson, for Mike Garcia, and others who are running here to keep our state from going off the insanity cliff?
Yeah, I have been waiting for years to see the pendulum start to swing in the state of California. One of, to quote, and I don't even know who I'm quoting here, but there's a saying, absolute power, absolutely corrupt.
Yeah.
And the reality is that in Sacramento, the majority party, the Democrats, have ruled for decades. They have a supermajority in the Senate, a supermajority in the state legislature. And what does that mean? In the state assembly, there are 80 members, only 18 are Republican. In the state Senate, there are 40 members, only 8 of them are Republican. They control every statewide office, right? They are in absolute power. And let me just tell you, absolute power, absolutely corrupt, could not be more true as to what's going on in Sacramento. It is, unethical at best and, corruption at its worst. When we see the shenanigans that the far left is pulling when it comes to the bipartisan crime package that was passed, that they are putting poison pills into just so that they can confuse voters about repealing Proposition 47. Now, Proposition 47 was passed back in 2014, and it essentially made it easier and reduced the accountability for retail theft, right? And as a result, we see, smash and grabs, retail theft has went through the roof, right? 80% of Californians want that repealed. And there's a proposition that thankfully is going on the ballot this November that not only seeks to repeal Proposition 47 and restore accountability for people committing retail theft, but that also addresses our fentanyl problem and the dealers. And it will warn them that if they sell and that fentanyl pill kills somebody, they could be faced with murder charges. It also creates true policy mandates to address the homelessness crisis and specifically the drug addiction and mental health component that the state failed to deal with, right? The left, the majority party, is playing politics with this, right? This is good policy. They're playing disgusting politics with it. And guess what? The people are frustrated and they see what's happening. I think long and gone are the days where the voter is no longer going to hold their government, who has had absolute power, accountable. The time is here. And I'll add this really important fact, right? Because I think we feel it in the sense of the conversation when we're knocking on doors, when I'm talking to voters, when I'm having meet and greets, with everyday people who haven't necessarily paid attention to politics. I'm hearing it in their frustration. They see all of these issues. They know that the far left Democrats are in control and it's a result of their policies. But what's even more exciting is that we're seeing it in voter registration numbers. Since October of last year, Republicans throughout the state of California have picked up Republican registration in every assembly seat, every Senate seat, every congressional seat, every county. We've registered over 180,000 new Republicans in the state of California, and the Democrats have lost over 100,000. We see that in my Senate seat, in Patrick Lee Gibson, who's running for AD 40, in Mike Garcia's congressional seat. People are waking up. They're frustrated with the failed leadership of Democrats in the state of California. They are thirsty for real leadership, and this is a huge opportunity for Republicans who want to roll up their sleeves and get stuff done for everyday people. And I think we're going to see that at the polls in November.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking to Suzette Valladares, running for state senate in the 23rd district. I'm going to ask you to put on your national hat for a minute. Tomorrow we've got a huge debate, huge debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And, like him or lump him, he's our Republican nominee. Obviously, he's not officially been nominated, but you get my point. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow night? We've got a staged debate, no audience. Mics get cut off so people don't talk over one another. CNN's Jake Tapper is the one that's going to be doing all of the asking of the questions. What do you see in the tea leaves for tomorrow night?
Yeah, so I did forget that that's tomorrow night. I can't believe it's already the end of June here. So, I don't have very high expectations for President Biden. So if he can stand up there for the length of the debate, that'll be impressive to me. But what I really hope happens is that jobs, the economy, and inflation are addressed, because this is a reality of the struggle that everyday working class Californians are facing, right? In our district, we have hundreds of thousands of people that leave the Antelope Valley, Victor Valley, Santa Clarita to commute down to work, that are spending, hundreds or thousands of dollars on gas, that are going to the grocery store and deciding, do I buy a smaller pack of diapers, and how much milk can I buy? That are worried that because they now have to pay, 50% more for their homeowner's insurance, right? Mm-hmm. People are worried that there's too much month at the end of their money, every single paycheck, right? And people are feeling these struggles. And we have had a government, both in Washington, D.C., with the president, and in California, that have failed to address the pocketbook issues and struggles of working class America. And you know who said this? Decades and decades ago? It's the economy, stupid, right? Yeah. Who coined that? Bill Clinton. Yeah. That party of Bill Clinton and actually addressing economic issues, I believe is gone. They have no idea what they're doing, and I'm hoping that comes across tomorrow because it's what Americans need to hear, that we're going to be on the right path for the economy.
I'm going to give you the last 25 seconds here, Suzette. If folks want to support you, if folks want to give money, they want to walk for you, where would they go?
Yes, everyone, please, I need your support. Go to SuzetteValladares.com. You can make a contribution. Big financial deadline on the 30th. You can register to volunteer. You got to get out because our future, my daughter's future, depends on it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That is Suzette Valladares running for State Senate 23rd District. Get out there, support her. Thank you so much for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit. We'll catch you right after the break. We need to get her elected. She needs to take Scott Wilkes' place up there as Scott is sent off into the pasture, if you will, respectfully, of course. We need to make sure there's a good common sense voice that takes his place. And so I'd encourage you to vote for Suzette Valladares. I don't know how many of you followed the elections yesterday, but there were several House and seat elections in New York and in Utah and a few other states. And the most satisfying race last night was for District 16 in New York. And it was a Democratic primary between George Latimer, a Democrat, and Jamal Bowman. You might remember Jamal Bowman. He, of course, is part of the squad with AOC and the rest of them. But he was also, his claim to fame as of late was, I never pulled that fire alarm. I thought it was just the emergency exit. Yeah, that Jamal Bowman. Over the weekend, he was flanked by Bernie Sanders and AOC at a rally. And I think we took out all the F-bombs on this, but here is how Jamal Bowman sounded just a little over 48 hours ago. Play that tape.
We are in the South Bronx. We are in the South Bronx. This is the birthplace of hip-hop. I am the hip-hop congressman. I want to hear South Bronx chant right now. South Bronx, 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 South Bronx. We are gonna show pack the power of the South Bronx. People ask me why I got a foul mouth.
Okay, he goes on and drops about half a dozen more F-bombs. That's the epitome, or that's how you can tell that he's going down. You see, AOC was with him at that rally in the South Bronx over the weekend, and she yesterday, who was supposed to be at his little, post-primary rally, party to celebrate his victory against George Latimer, all of a sudden she had to bow out. I think she saw the writing was on the wall as well. George Latimer is a Democrat. He would be considered a more moderate Democrat. He was supported by Hillary Clinton, and other Democrats came out strongly for this Latimer gentleman. 58.4 for George Latimer to 41.6 for Jamal Bowman. 44,371 voted for George Latimer, and 31,555 voted for Jamal Bowman. Folks, he got toasted. I mean, he got toasted and he got roasted. And folks, we need to do the same thing to AOC. Unfortunately, she won her primary race last night, resoundingly. She is not at all delivering for her constituents there in the borough that she represents in the Bronx. And if Jamal Bowman can be ousted, and we have to do that first with a, quote, I would say, a middle-of-the-road Democrat, then so be it. So George Latimer is a pro-Israel Democrat. I know that those pro-Israel Democrats are becoming few and far between, but that's what Latimer is. Jamal Bowman he was just saying some weird, over-the-top things about Israel and being rather anti-Semitic. But, what can I say? I'm just telling you that I felt so good when Jamal Bowman went down last night, because that tells me that there's still enough people, even in the Democratic Party, that realize that guys like him just take it too far. The last thing I want to really talk to you about is the Ten Commandments issue. I brought this up last Wednesday, and Jeff Landry, the governor of Louisiana, signed a bill last week basically saying the Ten Commandments should be displayed in public schools in the state of Louisiana. By the way, other states are following suit. Texas, Oklahoma, and a few other states are thinking about basically doing the same thing. And all this would do is basically just have the Ten Commandments posted. It's not being taught, it's just being posted. And somebody was going on and on about this whole thing, saying that this should go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court should argue this case. Now, I want to just read very quickly. I only got a couple minutes here. I want to read an article from Vox. And here's what they say, and you've got to get this. The irony is amazing. Quote, "The court has historically held that public schools have an unusually high obligation not to promote religious viewpoints, in large part because the young people educated in those schools are unusually vulnerable to coercion." Boy, that's a word. Because the young people educated in these schools are unusually vulnerable to coercion. So they don't want us to coerce them with the Ten Commandments, but they can coerce them with sex changes and saying that maybe you're a different gender, or maybe you're a he, she, or maybe you're a they, them. You don't think that stuff is also unusually coercive for this age group? Folks, it drips with irony to read this report from Vox, considering that they're saying this when it is so clear the hypocrisy that is dripping from this article. Of course they're vulnerable, but they're also vulnerable to all these weird things that are being foisted upon them. Let kids be kids. Can we all say amen to that? Thanks for tuning in today to Politics in the Pulpit. Looking forward to our day before Independence Day show next week. We'll catch you next week, Wednesday.